Welcome to Signal, the podcast where tech meets career and where we make sense of it all for you. I'm Steven, here with Joel. Glad you're tuning in. Let's get into it.
Steven, how are you doing?
Joel, I'm great. How are you today? It's a beautiful Monday here in Miami.
Yeah, it's not as beautiful in Leipzig. I was going to ask you where does this podcast find you, but it surely doesn't find you in rainy Leipzig.
We had rain all weekend, just so not to burst your bubble.
Drop the crocodile tears. I don't buy it.
Yeah, exactly. We did. We had rain all weekend, but if you don't have rain in South Florida, you don't have beautiful green. So it's sort of a price you pay, right?
Yeah. It's a pain of doing business, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
All right, let's jump in. Let me give you a number: 75%. In 2010, 5% of Americans said a college degree was very important. Today, that number is 35. In 15 years, it was cut in half. And when you look at what's actually happening to young graduates right now, you start to understand why. In the US, the unemployment rate for recent college graduates, people aged 22 to 27, has risen from 3.25% in 2019 to 5.7% by the end of 2025. That's not a recession number. The economy is doing fine. Companies are hiring. And yet, on top of that unemployment figure, 42.5% of graduates who do have jobs are underemployed, meaning they have a degree and they're working a job that doesn't need one. A barista with a bachelor's, a warehouse worker with a master's. Germany tells the same story. Graduate underemployment and unemployment there hit an all-time high in 2025. 335,000 people with university degrees out of work. For graduates under 30, the unemployment rate has more than doubled since 2022, and job vacancies for highly qualified roles just hit their lowest point in 25 years. Now here's where it gets really interesting and a little uncomfortable. The field with some of the highest graduate unemployment right now: computer science, 6.1%, computer engineering, 7.5%. That's higher than art history, higher than philosophy, higher than theology. For a decade, the advice was to learn code. Turns out AI learned to code first. What we're seeing is a fundamental breakdown in a promise that has been sold to an entire generation. Study hard, get a degree, and you'll be fine. The promise is cracking. We want to talk about what's actually going on and what it means for anyone navigating this right now. Steven, you've been around the block a little longer than I have, especially in the job market, in the corporate market. If somebody would have asked you 20 years ago, 15 years ago, would you told them that you'd have seen this coming, or is this more of a surprise to you as well?
Look, I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it now. It is a surprise in the sense that a few things have happened, right? The evolution of AI has been so rapid pace that, and we talked about this a few episodes back about how AI can become a better coder. It's because AI is programmatic. And if you feed the structure of programming to it and it learns all of the rules, it only will follow the rules and make things absolutely perfect. The one thing it lacks is creativity, but creativity can be also experimented with in hundreds of thousands of iterations. It can try and try again, depending on what you do or what you ask it to do. And this is where, like vibe coding, your creativity is actually instructing that structure inside AI to go off and build things based on your creativity. I wouldn't have seen that coming. That was a massive innovation. I think that has impacted. We saw this with low code, no code programming just about 3, 4, 5 years ago, where things became a lot more drag and drop and less about traditional coding styles. That's where I think this thing just sort of picked up using AI, and now we're up beyond it.
Mm-hmm.
I still believe that computer science is a viable degree for the engineering mindset. I think that you have to be thinking beyond just coding and building websites. And there are applications out there to be built that there are problems that have not been solved yet. So I do believe that the training of the learning of all of these languages, these approaches, building those skills for programming, it's not a waste of time, especially if we need more architects to build bigger and better applications. Security, for instance, is a huge opportunity for these kinds of resources. I guess I didn't see this coming so fast. That's what I would say.
Right.
I did see it coming because technology has evolution cycles that are quite rapid, usually in 5 or 10 year blocks. But I don't think from 2023 with the introduction of ChatGPT to now that I've seen such an evolution happen so quickly.
Yeah. Funny you mentioned 2023. I mean, the in Germany, the under 30 grad unemployment has doubled since 2022, which
Right there.
2022 was the first year that we've had no direct impacts from COVID, no
Mhm.
quarantine across the country, no. I think they basically fully pulled back on all the safety measures when it comes to going in public spaces and stuff, which Germany did it a lot longer than some other places, for example, like the US. So there's always this year 2022 will always have a ring to it with in connection to
Yeah.
that. But as you said, ChatGPT came out around that time. It's you generally say, as you said, that there's going to be some sort of an evolution cycle that will sort of rinse and repeat, and some jobs will be left behind, some jobs will be invented by then that haven't been there before. What's really interesting about this thing is that it's not a gradual erosion of the industry. It's an I mean, it fell off a cliff.
Yes.
As I said, in 15 years, the belief in the meaning, that the value of a college degree just was cut in half, 75 to 35% in a little under 15 years. So, and when I did research on this, the initial reaction was, okay, well, yeah, well, there's Scott Galloway always says is that a lot of the U.S. colleges and universities are now hedge funds that also offer courses. So a lot of those degrees that they offer are like, sort of paid fun, but is it
Right.
what meaningful work are you going to do with that? So I was going to look into sort of the areas of degrees that have the lowest to highest unemployment. And I would have thought initially that, technical degrees, engineering, software development, CS, anything along those lines, business maybe even will have a lower unemployment, while things like philosophy, art history, culture studies, whatever, will have
Traditional.
a higher one. And a lot of ways it's flipped. So for example, the lowest unemployment, 5 ones with the lowest unemployment is nutrition, nursing, art history, philosophy, and finance. And then nursing makes absolute
That makes
sense. It's
sense.
an incredibly important a job in all of our societies. The highest unemployment rates across the next five are anthropology with 7.9 to 9.4%. Physics 7.8, computer engineering 7.5, fine arts 7 to 7.5, and then computer science 6.1. That that doesn't feel right with my gut feeling I had going into this. So sure, the way we might look at degrees and if it's important or not is changing, but that was initially the industries or the areas that I was going to be like, that's probably where they will value a degree more than anything else. I got friends that are journalists that are like, you don't necessarily need one. Like if you do meaningful
Right.
work, you're going to be fine. While in some of those development, software developer or something jobs, you're usually going to have a requirement for a degree. Is there anything that this make sense to you that these areas are having a lesser unemployment rate, while one of those ones in engineering and software development are seeing higher unemployment rates after graduation?
Well, I mean, let's focus in on the one that I think there's a reason why computer science is experiencing this lower employment rate, which is the higher unemployment rate, rather. It's because you have had probably a decade plus, maybe even more, 2 decades of marketing that everyone should get a degree in computer science. You said it in the intro. Look, in the United States, we have a system called TSA pre at the airport. And I always make a joke to my wife. I say, if everybody has TSA pre, then no one has TSA pre. Meaning the
Hmm.
lines are now longer than they ever were because
Yeah.
everybody's got TSA pre. It's like
Yeah.
you ask yourselves, like, if everybody has what everybody else has, then nobody has anything different. And
Hmm.
if there are only so many jobs, to say there are a lot of jobs, but there are only so many jobs, and everybody has that degree and everybody has that aspiration to gain employment in that field, it's going to be harder. It's natural. So we've done ourselves a disservice of over marketing for 2 decades. Nursing may experience a similar glut later on because we've been over marketing nursing for years. Oh, we've got this healthcare crisis. Yes, we do. But if the more you market, the more you push those young minds towards that career path, you're going to have a more crowded scene. What's going to happen,
Yeah.
even if we don't see unemployment go down or increase, rather, we're going to see wages decrease because the market will become more competitive. So if there are 20,000 nurses today, and in 10 years, there'll be 50,000 nurses, 50,000 active nurses are going to be competing for probably less than 50,000 jobs. So the
Right.
ones that get hired will either be really, really good and have tons of experience, and or they're willing to maybe take a little bit less. So
Mm-hmm.
this becomes a law of numbers at some point, right? You have so many more people who are vying to be in that field. We've done too much in too short a period of time to overmarket this particular career path. You have these technological advancements like AI, which are colliding with this. I think we've done ourselves a disservice there. Now, the other degrees that you mentioned are interesting to me. When I think about unemployment rates in the arts, because I come from the arts, it's my first degree. I understand it because, typically as a musician or a painter or sculptor, so like that, or designer, it's harder. The jobs are, the commercial aspects of those kind of careers are kind of scant. They're not like,
Yeah.
you don't go to the want pages and say looking for a musician,
Yeah. Yeah.
looking
Yeah.
for a songwriter,
Yeah.
I studied film scoring at Berklee College of Music, and I loved it, but I couldn't find a job to save my life. And it was because I was savvy with technology that I fell into the tech industry. That's why I am here today, because to be frank, I might have been a decent composer. I might have been a good musician, but I wasn't good enough amongst the three opportunities that might have existed in 1994. I wasn't really good enough to get one of those three opportunities. So,
Yeah.
anyways, bottom line is everybody follows their passion, and some of us get degrees in those passions, with those passions. And then we figure it out. We go, oh shit, I can't actually get a job doing what I love. I can get a job and I can continue to do what I love, but they're not necessarily going to be the same thing. I think that that's probably a reason why we see some of those other traditionally, sort of more passionate professions, like, I'll say like art history, or something of that nature, where it's a noble pursuit, but it's harder to find a gig doing that work. But having experienced this myself, I think that necessity is the mother of invention. So you being a musician or you being an artist, and then finding your way into another career, and then leveraging those skills in some unique way, creates true competition, creates
Mm-hmm.
true opportunity for you, because you have a totally different viewpoint. I'm not the marketing executive who, was an MBA in 1994 right after college. I'm the marketing executive who came up in the ranks, lived in the data center, slept on the data center floor, has a music background. So everything I approach when I've taken on a position, whatever stage or level of my career, I've always had that musical mindset. It's that
Mm-hmm.
collaboration. It's that sort of band sort of mentality, like supporting the other players as they play. It's that same collaboration that you see in work, right? So those leaders that can harness those soft skills, they're going to be very successful. Well, where do you get those soft skills? You get them from places like the arts. You don't get them necessarily from business. So I'm a little unique in the sense that I went back to school and got my MBA after that. But the point is like, use what you've got. And that's how you get in the position that you get in, which is you use what you got. You got to tap into every resource you have, whether those are trained resources like from a college degree, or those are street smarts, or those
Mm-hmm.
are innate capabilities like this musical stuff. You just got to use what you got to get ahead. I feel
Right.
bad for kids today. I know you're probably going to segue to the next piece, but like, I feel bad for children today who are growing up in that college age group that are looking for work, because they've been sold a little bit of a bill of goods on this whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I was aware of in the consulting business is that that's an industry that they started hiring across different majors and
Yes.
areas of expertise a longer time ago, a couple of years ago already, hiring from the humanities, social scientists, political scientists, where initially it would have been business majors, finance majors, those
Yes.
sorts of backgrounds, where they then segued into different areas of of majors, as I said. But another thing is the regret factor, where there's a lot of people that I've met, but also numbers show that almost half of people that study something across the lines, along the lines of social science, humanities art graduates in those areas that they regret their choice and would have
Yeah.
taken a different one if they could go back
Yeah.
in time, which unfortunately they can't in this case. But so it's not going to be an easy question, but sort of what would your advice be to a 17-year-old sitting in front of their UCA's forum right now? And because I'm probably one of those examples where I'm 25 now. I'm on the latter end of my bachelor's now, but it took me a longer time to figure it out. But by now, I've built up a pretty reasonable CV and have a better understanding of what to do. But I'm also an advocate for being very clear about that this is a difficult path to walk, because it's gonna get close a couple of times, if you know what I'm saying. So,
Yeah.
what will your general advice be to young kids? Because at this time, with the pace and the rapid pace economy is running and technology is running, you can wonder what jobs are really safe anymore beyond stuff like medicine and surgeons and like highly skilled and trained people.
I would probably say don't chase the trend. You know, the trend we saw in the last 2 decades was computer science. Unless we, kind of glorified Silicon Valley too much in media and probably TV and film, and everybody was going to become Mark Zuckerberg. Well, frankly, not everybody's ever going to become Mark Zuckerberg, even in a perfect economy, right? So I think we've glorified professions a little too much. Look at the TV shows out there. So they promote certain things. There's cops and there's doctors and nurses. Look at the TV
Hmm.
shows, right?
Yeah.
There are technology TV shows like Silicon Valley. I think we do ourselves a disservice. The kids are doing themselves a disservice by chasing trends. There's
Hmm.
another trend here in Miami, which is everybody wants to become an influencer. I also think that's foolhardy, and that's
And
probably going to
everybody
fall off a
thinks they
cliff.
can do that.
Exactly. Look, I'm an accidental influencer. I'm not an influencer, but the fact is that I've been doing this for a little while now, and I've been working with people like you, and but it's not significant in any
Yeah.
kind of professional sense. But I guess my point is don't follow trends. Look at sustainable career opportunity. I would actually, it's hard for kids because they don't think sort of beyond their sort of next exam, but if they
Hmm.
looked really at the research of the economy and said, look, where is the ball, where's the puck going to be in 5 years?
Hmm.
Look at those, I would say we over rotated on finance as well. Because,
Yeah.
you see a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
of, you know, you see a lot of these fintech people out there today, and they're all getting degrees in finance. And that's just another trend where we're going to have millions of people in finance, just like we have millions of people in technology. And there's going to be only so many jobs. There's only going to be so
Yeah.
many investment firms and only so many banks. So don't follow the trends. Look at the patterns and then it's just like a good stock. What are the fundamentals of that good stock? Where do you think that stock will be if they do all the right things? That company does all the right things in the next 5 years. Don't bet on the one that's, at $1,000 a share right now. Bet on the one that's at $10 a share and look at where it could go and whether or not that career path has legs. It's going to take real research and planning, and it's going to require you to do some interviewing of people who work in that field. Our kids don't do enough introspection. They don't look inside and go well, what do I really want? What do I really
Hmm.
need? They don't also tap into the network and figure out who else do I know in this world that's done this, been there, done that, and that could help us somehow vet our assumptions. We need more of that in our education system. Go out there and teach them to experiment and actually analyze the results versus just listen to somebody like a Scott Galloway who tells you what to do. And by the way, Scott will be gone in 20 years. And if you screwed up and followed his advice, guess what? You were
Hmm.
probably not too happy with him. My point
Yeah.
is, my advice to these folks would be do your research, don't follow these obvious trends, and then go and find people in that career path who can actually give you frank feedback and inside information about how it is to do that job today and what they envision the world to be in 20 years when you're in that career, right? Because these things are not like 10-minute journeys. These are 20-minute marathons. These are
Yeah.
20-year marathons.
Yeah.
These are long-term, very long-term investments. We go to school for 4 to 6 to 8 years, and then we work a career for 20, 30, 40 years. So these are
Hmm.
long-term investments. Would you dump all your money in a stock to think that it will give you $1 million tomorrow? Or would you look at diversification over the next 2 decades to get you where you want to be in retirement? It's the same
Right.
common sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one thing that I was told once a couple of years back that it's a sort of a gut check, but it makes a lot of sense now. It's find something you're good at rather than something you love. And if you find something you're good at, you love doing, and you also can make a decent income out of that, then God bless you. You're doing amazing. You
Yeah.
go. It's not going to be the reality for everyone. Sometimes you're going to have to, swallow the pill and do something that's not the perfect thing for you, but you're good at it. You might be good at building tables, but you really love computers, but that's just you're just too stupid for SQL or whatever. I don't know. It's going to be the situations. But yeah, so we have by now we've established that sort of this degree promise is under pressure, not just in
It
the
is
US
under
but also
pressure.
in Germany. The job markets for graduates looks harder than it has in a decade, in a long time. So the obvious looming question about all of this is, what is AI doing to us? It's going to help us, or is it going to just make this worse? So here's where I sort of want to push back on the obvious answer, where a lot of these doomsday scenario scientists are going to be like, they're going to take all our jobs and then they're going to take over the government, whatever. I want to push back and give us a couple of examples where we've had a similar level of panic in society and where the outcome was a lot different than the majority of people probably predicted. So stay with us. All right, let me give you a pop quiz. It's 1985. Microsoft just launched Excel. Before that, if you wanted a financial model, you needed a human to build it by hand. Now, anyone with a PC can do it on their own books, their own taxes, their own projections. Question: what happens to the number of accountants? They lose their jobs, right? Wrong. In 1979, there were 299,000 accountants in America. Excel launches in 1985. 1989, 4 years later, there are 524,000. That's 75% growth. Today, there are 1.28 million, and the number is still going up. Round 2, 1969. The first ATM machine is installed at a chemical bank branch in New York. It can dispense cash, take deposits, check your balance. The machine is literally called automatic teller machine. So what happens to bank tellers? Still there. In 1970, there were 250,000 of them. By 2010, there were 600,000. The ATM did not kill the teller. It made branches cheaper to open, banks opened 40% more of them, and suddenly they needed more people, just people doing a different, higher skilled job. The teller stopped being a cashier and became a relationship banker. Wages went up, the job got better. So this is the thing we keep getting wrong about technology. We look at what it replaces and we forget about what it creates. And right now we're having that exact same conversation about AI. So today I want to look at the data, because the gap between how most people use AI and how the best companies in the world use AI is one of the most interesting stories in the economy right now. So I'm trying to give us a little comfort here, Stephen, but when you hear these stories about Excel and accountants and bank tellers and ATM machines, does this give you comfort, or is, in your perspective, in your mind, AI going to be different this time around?
You tapped into something very important, which is, if we look at these as tools, then these tools are accelerants for these professions. You have all these smart accountants who have an important job to do. They're doing taxes and financial settlements. And, there's we've got a ton of statisticians and accountants on Wall Street every day looking at numbers. The key is they need tools. They need tools to do their job. It's too hard to do it with a calculator. You have to have smart tools. And I think the smarter the tools become, that's good, because that enables new and creative approaches, new approaches to solving old problems. And I think you're tapping into something, which is to say, um, the introduction of a technology, albeit as disruptive as a spreadsheet application, which at that point in history was very disruptive. It was a very hard job to do, to create formulas, to do this on a calculator. Scientific, I've never used a scientific calculator, a pain in the ass. I'm sure there's people that love it. There are people who use abacuses and all that stuff.
And they probably have a very special flavor of autism if they do. So,
but that said, it's like those are evolutions of that same thing. And you got to this thing where now you have, even think of that spreadsheet market, from Excel running in DOS to
Hmm.
Excel running on Windows to Excel running in the cloud to then 30 different companies are all trying to do what Excel did and now
Yeah.
doing it all sorts of different ways and making it more and better and interesting. Turning an Excel spreadsheet into project management, Gantt charts, and turning that
Yeah.
into trackers and stuff. There's all sorts of creative things you can do with the technology. You've got companies like Smartsheet and Monday out there who are like the next generation of these technologies. And so I think there are way too many jobs to be done out there that these tools cannot do them all. And that it's like back to my earlier comment from the other segment, which is, necessity is the mother of invention, which is to say, you have new problems that arise, and then
Hmm.
you have tools that help you get those challenges, accomplished, and you can claim victory over those challenges with these tools. Now, it's your ingenuity and your creativity is how you use these tools to solve new and emerging problems. I think if somebody just played with inside the lines, inside the box, and always used the tools, we would never see some of the growth that you're experiencing, which is they're pushing the boundaries of what these tools can do, and they're actually using them for new and better things. And as a result, we're seeing people doing different parts of the job. It's not
Yeah.
just one job, there are multiple dimensions of this job. And
Yeah.
so these kind of things, they seem scary when they're introduced, but yet they create so much other opportunity around it if you can harness that opportunity.
Yeah.
I'm looking today at, did we ever think that delivery would ever be, a little bucket robot going up and down the road and delivering your food? I see them here in Miami every single day, every hour.
Yeah.
But 5 years ago, it was the Uber guy. 5 years before that, it was a guy in his own car. 5 years
Hmm.
before that, it was somebody on a bike. 5 years, you see, the job hasn't changed. Get my food from A to B, but how we do it has changed. There
Right.
are huge amounts of opportunity for the people who are building those bucket robots and ecosystems of tracking software that are being used to get the bucket robot from A to B. You see, it doesn't stop with the main job. There's a,
Hmm.
a whole orbit of jobs around it. And I
Yeah.
think this is where the opportunity is. It's like, don't just look at a spade as a spade as a spade. Figure out what the other dimensions of that thing are going to be, and then invest in those areas, build in those areas, experiment in those areas. And you'll have a continuous opportunity in technology or whatever business because you're
Yeah.
looking not the only use case, but like the 100th use case. And I think that's where our real opportunity, that's creativity and ingenuity that get us there.
Yeah. I think one thing that would genuinely help the the average emotion or feeling towards AI and in our societies if people learn to use it in a more proficient way. But I don't have high hopes for this because by today most people walk around with a device in their pocket that has more computing power than NASA used to send people to the moon in 1969, and the majority of the world uses their iPhone or Samsung phone to scroll Instagram and play Candy Crush. So
Yes.
sort of the gap between what the tech can do and what most people use it for is exactly where we are with AI right now. AI,
Yeah.
chatbots, ChatGPT, Claude, to the majority of consumers that are not companies, are glorified search engines, just beefed up search engines that are just doing a better job than the Google does by now. Let's look at how enterprises are using them. And I looked at statistics from the S&P 500 listed companies and sort of had and had it tracked down into the areas and by what percentage you're spending. And as you said or sensed, the biggest use case is software and coding. 55% of all capex spent on AI implementation was in the software and coding part. So the example here is that almost half of all developers are using AI daily in some sort of way. For example, if I code something for school, there's AI in the IDE I use. I use IntelliJ, and they do auto fulfillment. If you use the pro version, it'll give you ideas how to fix the code, how to finish it. It'll look over and look for bugs, and or you can
Hmm.
even say look for notes in the look for to-do notes in the code and fix them for me, stuff like that, which probably not even probably 5 years ago a dev would have had done by himself. The follow-up is IT and support. So something like a service desk automation thing is what a lot of companies also use them for. That comes in at about 10% of total CapEx spending across the S&P companies. Marketing is 9%. Customer success is also at 9%. Then design comes in at 7%, and HR comes in at 5%. So things like screening, onboarding workflows, pre-screening applications and CVs, and stuff like that. The use cases there in the company, I just have a hard time figuring out how the bridge is going to go into the daily life of a person or where the deeper use case is. I love Claude or a chat bot. I love it's an outstanding product if you think about it. Does it have problems? Is it going to have some errors? Of course, who doesn't? But what is the most likely use case for you for just your average Joe using AI in their daily life? I'm not talking about them having that integrated into their Office 365 stack at work, but like what product beyond the chatbot do you see in daily life for your average consumer being the most likely one?
Well, in the enterprise, I mean, say from a marketing perspective, I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity to generate content with AI. Now, is that content final? No. Does it
Yeah.
require human in the loop? Does it require fine tuning? Yes. So you made a comment about just average person just creating a prompt and kind of asking a question like very one-dimensional kind of search kind of question, that expects AI to generate all sorts of insights that you need to tell AI exactly what you really want in order to get what you want. So I think a lazy prompt is kind of a bad example. It's an example of a poor use case for AI. I think if you're in business and you really want to use AI to find new areas of opportunity, like in a creative sense, I want to build an infographic. Well, you have to go back and like give it some information to build the infographic. Well, it doesn't give you back what you want. You really have to condition that prompt, recondition it in order to get what you want. That requires your own thought and creativity and your own intellect in order to do that. Like, I want it to actually look like this. I need it to say these 5 things. I need it to express this particular message. Well, that's your original thought. That's not AI saying. And what AI is going to say is, would you like it like this? Would you like it like that? Are you looking for this? Because I can help you in this area. Ask what else would you like to see? I think that's where the creator is still you, and you're effectively engineering AI to generate the output, which is more the executor, not the creator. Okay, so you ask about what the consumer should do, right? So I think AI still has a tremendous possibility for exploration of content, period. Like, there's so much digitized content that exists in our world today. Like, we've only seen the beginning of this and we've seen so much of it with the internet in the first 30, 40 years, but we've captured so much digital content. We create so much digital content. I think as a layperson who's trying to do research, who may be doing, a student in school, there's tremendous amount of resource out there. You make this comment about you building code and having a tool inside of AI that's third party, that's attached to your platform, that helps you be a better coder. So I think training, education, enablement, those kinds of things are huge opportunities for individuals to learn more using AI. And by the way, that original application you're using didn't have that code checker in it. That's another example of ingenuity where a third party says, you know what? I'm betting on Claude. Claude's going to be a great engine for actually building the software and generating the output, but it doesn't have error checking. It doesn't have bug tracking. It doesn't have, code proofing, like style proofing inside of code. I want to use a third party that plugs into Claude. Well, look at that company. That company is probably making millions of dollars selling their software as a plug-in to Claude.
Yeah.
The original thing is Claude, which is worth, hundreds of billions of dollars in market capitalization. But then there's an ecosystem of other third parties who've built integrations into Claude, and they're making billions of dollars. You see? So this is back to the earlier point. It's like, you don't stop with the first idea. You keep going. And where you see the real creativity and the huge opportunity is not in the first idea. It's in the 100th idea, because you're now building an ecosystem of third parties that are generating true value outside of the original idea. And there's tremendous amount of opportunity there. So, I mean, people have to look beyond the very basic, look beyond the obvious to something like, I think that there's something more to this beyond what's on the surface.
Yeah.
And so those who will truly explore with AI are going to get beyond the surface.
And I mean, I think that the App Store, the iOS App Store, would
Yep.
be a lot more empty if it wasn't for vibe coders just throwing stuff in
Right.
there. And then the amount of, like, in my line of work, I work with companies, bakeries who are run by sort of the Swiss Army knife CEO kind of guy that, or lady that does everything and anything and works 80-hour weeks. And the level of just white collar work, the repetitive stuff that you're able to outsource after a short period of training the AI on what you need it to do, your chatbot, usually they're just using ChatGPT, is incredible. There'd be a lot of businesses that probably wouldn't be as prosperous or successful if it wasn't for the use of some sort of AI in their line of work that saves them actual hours out of their week. So it's, yeah, I think everybody has to find their way, but if you use it right, and if we sort of also define one of our big topics that goes across all of our episodes, that sort of the boundaries and responsibilities around AI, then it already is and can be a more incredible helper in so many ways, private and public, you know?
Indeed. Yeah. I think we're only at the very, like the beginning. We're in like the first centimeter or millimeter of understanding what can be done with this technology. And I think it's too easy for us to just declare defeat and say, okay, it's figured everything out and I'm done. I'm
Yeah,
a
yeah.
stupid human. Let's not forget it was the stupid human who created AI. So let's
And
go
yeah,
back to
yeah,
let's go back to the mat and figure out what else we can do in and around it. Like don't accept the first verse. Like there's a second verse and a third verse and there's a chorus. You got to keep listening to the song. You got to keep creating the
yeah,
song. It's not just one verse. So
yeah.
to me, people are so like willing to like throw the towel. And
Hmm.
like, no, if we threw the towel in, we'd still think that the best way to capture thoughts would be on a stone tablet.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. So whether or not these two stories around Excel and the bank tellers helped you get a little bit more confidence in AI, we both believe it's here to stay, and we're gonna have to deal with it one way or another in every facet of it, from the energy consumption and infrastructure to the
Yes.
daily use in your life. Stephen, as always, thank you so much. The last words of each episode are yours, and I'm gonna look forward to see you next week again.
Thank you, Joel. It's always a pleasure to hang with you here on the Signal podcast. And I really hope that anyone listening today, you're encouraged by these words and these discussions, because I think there's only opportunity out there. Whether you're a doctor, computer scientist, or you're an AI programmer, or you're a delivery person, it doesn't matter.
Hmm.
There's only opportunity out there. And you got to just keep looking for it and keep working hard.
Thank you so much. Have a good week.
Cheers.
That's it for today's episode of Signal. If it's got you thinking, subscribe so you'll never miss one. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and 6 other platforms, so you've got no excuse. Follow us on Instagram at Signal Podcast Official for updates, clips, and behind-the-scenes content. And if you found this valuable, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And we'll see you next time on Signal.